Coming up today on the Markcast. Yeah, we are moving to Texas. We have Danny busy Instagramming from downtown Dallas. The Rock is jet setting to Texas. We are packing up the XFL and we are hitting the road. Huge implications. Is this the doomsday scenario hub season of the XFL? Are we setting up businesses there? Is that going to be the home base for operations? We have a longtime friend of the show, your friend and mine, Greg Parks from XFLboard.com, stopping by.
It just doesn't sound good, and it gives the impression, right or wrong, that financially the league is not willing to go as far as it needs to make this league successful.
And then we still have lots of USFL stuff to talk about. Remember that big lawsuit that was pending that was threatening the shutdown of the season? Whatever happened with that? Well, it kind of got buried in the news the Thursday before the USFL kickoff last weekend. So luckily we have Michael Cohen, Trademark and IP lawyer, stopping by to fill us in on all that.
When you go through discovery, you do depositions, you do interrogatories and all that. New evidence might come to light that might contradict some of this stuff.
We are also joined by Pat Rifino of XFL and USFL News Hub. We're talking all the USFL Week 1 news coming out. We got Chipgate, Pizzagate, the new kicking balls for the USFL. Talking all that stuff and previewing Week 2.
I'm not an XFL hater because the thing is when you hate on these leagues, you're not hating on Daryl Johnson and Dwayne Johnson and Danny Garcia. You're hating on Luis Perez. You're hitting on John Wolford. You're hitting on these players who this is going to make or break their lives.
And then we got your CFL love as always. We have Jagarrett Davis, courtesy of the Toronto Argonauts, joining us.
Sports football leagues besides the NFL, y'all got to capitalize on that opportunity because, like, if you don't, you're going to get left behind. So you don't want to go from second to last. And you're an afterthought. Once you're an afterthought, you base your history. And the CFL has been around too long and too big of an opportunity for them to maximize it, for them not to do so.
Should be a loaded show. Thanks for stopping by. Hey guys, Reed here. Welcome to the Markcast. Thank you so much for stopping by today. Really appreciate you checking out the show. Lots of news to get to in the world of the XFL and the USFL. I don't want to be too prefacey today with my plugs. I'll try to keep it short because we have a lot of stuff to dig our teeth into and digest here. The XFL, are we moving to Texas? That is the question. Are we setting up a hub in Dallas? Danny is busy Instagramming stories from downtown Dallas. The Rock is jet setting to Texas, talking about setting up an XFL headquarters there. What does that all mean? Is it the doomsday hub scenario that we've all been dreading with Mike Mitchell's reporting? Is it a modified hub? Are we setting up a home base of business there? We're going to talk about all of that. We're also recapping Week 1 of the USFL, talking all the games, all that stuff, Pizzagate, Chipgate, everything coming out, attendance, TV ratings, and then we are looking ahead to Week 2 of the USFL as well, plus some CFL stuff. If you want even more USFL, I did a pregame show on Monday. It's on the YouTube stream and it's on the podcast, audio stream. If you want more USFL, I did a call-in show that way. Lots of in-depth talk coming right out of the weekend, kind of getting initial thoughts on that. So you can check that out as well if you want. Huge guest list today. I know I say that every week, but this week, I really do mean it. Longtime friend of the show. I am a fanboy of his from PW Torch. I've listened to him for years, podcast about wrestling, Raw, SmackDown, Impact Wrestling, all that stuff. Greg Parks, contributor and columnist for XFLboard.com, joins the show. Really good time to get Greg on. We've been working on this, trying to schedule. Greg is a busy guy. Really good news for him to come on with all the XFL stuff breaking this week. So that really worked out. Able to talk with Greg about that. We break down all the stuff, the hub scenario. We get Greg's thoughts on the coaches and the cities, the whole logo rebrand, kind of all that stuff. Everything XFL. Greg Parks is your guy today with that interview. You will have all of your news covered. Then we transition to a little USFL. I'm bringing back on Michael Cohen, our trademark and IP lawyer, to kind of put to bed the USFL lawsuit, the real USFL versus Fox Sports USFL for the meantime. That broke kind of late Thursday before the kickoff. The judge denied the preliminary injunction for the real USFL, trying to halt the season. So that's probably going to either move to either to court, obviously, to a trial, or to a settlement. So I wanted to bring on Michael. We'll probably talk with him again in the future. But for the meantime, kind of put that story to bed, kind of figure out where we're at with that. Then lots more USFL stuff. Pat Rifino is joining us from XFL and USFL News Hub, CFL News Hub, the whole family of that. Pat, we're breaking down all the USFL, player standouts, things coming out of the weekend. What did Pat think of the attendance, ratings, all that stuff? We talk about the chip gate, the new footballs that the USFL is getting for the special teams. That is exciting. And then we're looking forward to week 2 of the USFL. Really good, long, in-depth talk with Pat. A little more extended than I think we anticipated, but I really appreciate Pat's time. Lots of thoughts about all that stuff. Pat is like me, very passionate about these leagues and the players. We criticize the leagues because we don't want unforced errors, right? We want them to there's so much going against alt football. I really want everything to succeed. And that's why we give the criticisms and the notes that we do. I really appreciate Pat. Pat also wrote an article for the Markcast.com all about kind of alt football QB salaries, how it relates to the NFL, players, kind of journeyman players working through these alt leagues, the amount of money they make, really interesting statistics that way. So we kind of round out the discussion with Pat on that. That article will be linked in the description if you want to read more about Pat's work. Pat does 2 or 3 articles a month for the Markcast. I really appreciate him doing that. And then finally, courtesy of the Toronto Argonauts, we have Jagarrett Davis coming on to talk a little CFL. Jagarrett's traveling, getting ready to head back up north for the CFL season. Really appreciate him taking the time to come on and chat some CFL. So there you have it. We have Greg Parks, Michael Cohen, Pat Rifino, and Jagarrett Davis joining the show. I think I'm recording late enough today that if any craziness, I think all the craziness is broken for the day. So I'll probably check back in at the end. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy all of this work. We're still hovering, trying to hit that 2,000 mark. We have our big giveaway, all our Grey Cup stuff, our custom jersey we're giving away from Royal Retros. Dustin was on the show. Our big USFL pregame show. If you guys haven't checked that out already, that's on the YouTube as well. Really appreciate everyone stopping by and viewing that. Very happy with it, with the turnout that we did for that. But yeah, like and subscribe. Get us over that 2,000 mark. We have an AAF Commanders jersey. I've got extra rally towels from Dustin from the inaugural game. So lots of stuff. Like and subscribe. I'll check back in at the end. Thanks for watching. Well, I could sit and chit chat with my guest a long time before we hit record today, but I want to get into it because we have a lot of news and everything to talk about in the world of XFL. Greg Parks, how are you?
I'm doing well, Reed. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, the last time we were on, we were kind of talking about, I think, pontificating, lack of XFL stuff. There wasn't a lot going on. Well, now today, crack the Zoa. I've got my XFL hat. Lots of stuff to talk about. How are you feeling about everything?
I'm feeling good. I know the last time we were on, I was on with you, was probably, July of last year? And we were just kind of catching up and kind of touching base for really the first time that I had been on the show. And it was sort of like we kind of left it at, well, the next time that there's big news, we'll have you on again. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe in 2 or 3 months, I'll be on again. And it's been, I think, 9 or 10 months now. It's just, there was a much longer lull than I think anyone expected. But we are firmly in that area right now where it's going to be boom, 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 as it has been for the last couple of weeks of hold on to your hats. The news is coming.
Yeah, I like that. Could I interest you in any Texas barbecue?
Well, it really sounds good right about now. I'll be honest, after the last few hours.
So that is the big news today as of we're recording. We had, Mike had reports out. There were rumors kind of floating around about, are we doing a bubble in Texas? Or are we doing the hub? We don't necessarily know yet. Danny posted today a photo. She is in downtown Dallas. The Rock posted this wonderful photo of him, like, the arms are very like Army-esque, getting on the plane.
Very formal.
It was very odd. With the caption, it says, I guess he's making the X. It says the X of our XFL represents the intersection of opportunities. And that's my job as owner, to create opportunities for players to ball out, live their dreams. Big day for us today and our entire XFL organization. Great state of Texas. Here we come. Wheels up. Hashtag XFL HQ. So what do you make of that? A lot there.
Yes. I hesitate to make too much of it yet. No matter what decision, hub, no hub, partial hub, there was going to have to be a business headquarters for the league somewhere, just like the XFL was headquartered in Stamford, Connecticut. And yet, there was no hub in Stamford. There was no team in Stamford. It was where the WWE was headquartered. So it made sense with Vince McMahon owning it at the time to headquarter there in Stamford. So I'm not really sure how much to read into it. It sounds like they're having pretty high-level meetings with head coaches this week based on the reporting that's out there. So certainly there's that going on in Texas this week. But to read anything more into it in terms of hub location or anything like that, I think if there is a hub, it probably will be in Texas, just because it makes sense to have it in the same location as your business headquarters, not to mention the fact that there's potentially 3 teams going to be located in Texas. So it makes sense for a whole host of reasons, but I don't think we can really draw that conclusion out from what we've seen teased on social media today.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, and that's the thing. I think maybe they had, in the last week or two, maybe had thought about doing a hub, got a lot of negative, kind of vitriolic reaction.
Yeah, from me, by the way, that was one of them.
Well, and I want to, and I mean, originally I was going to bring you on because of your column here I have pulled up, and we'll get into that on xflboard.com. But, it's one of those things they claim, we're a league of the people, right? And not even to use the rock and all that, pun intended, but, Danny has said, we want to be open, transparent, have all this communication and everything. And then, when you come out and you say, hey, rumors come out, we might be doing a hub, that was not met with good reaction.
Right. And I think you bring up a good point of the XFL. What does it want to be about? Certainly it is that connection between the fans and the players. And I think that was one of even the 4 pillars that they came out with when they revealed the new logo a few weeks ago. And it's very hard to do that when you're at arm's length as a fan. You're not going to your favorite team's games. You're not interacting with the players in the city. They're not making appearances necessarily. And who knows, maybe they'll fly them up to those cities and make appearances and hobnob with the fans, but then fly them back to Texas for games. I don't know. But it just doesn't sound good. And it gives the impression, right or wrong, that financially the league is not willing to go as far as it needs to make this league successful. And for all of Vince McMahon's faults, he made XFL 2.0 with the money that he had earmarked for it, and with the money that he had spent on it, he made it first class for an alternative organization. And, when you start talking about hubs, it feels very minor league. It feels, the message that it sends is, we're not ready, whether financially, whether they don't have the leases because they got a late start, whatever the reasoning is, it doesn't give a real positive impression to the fan base that you're trying to attract.
Well, especially when that has been the number one complaint against the USFL is, well, this is fake or this isn't whatever. XFL comes back, it's going to be big time. We're going to be back. There's a lot of divisiveness online right now. I don't know if you in your life see a lot. There's a lot on Facebook and the message boards, on Twitter and stuff as well. But a lot of tribalism one way or another. And that was always the mark was, well, when the XFL comes back, we'll show you how it's done. We're going to be in all the cities. And then you hear this and even a modified hub, anything besides 8 teams in 8 cities is going to seem like a failure to a lot of fans.
It is. And that was sort of one of the reasons that I looked at the XFL as having an advantage starting a year later. There are not a lot of advantages to starting a year after the USFL. I think that was one of the huge mistakes that the XFL made, is not starting in 2022, opening the door for another league like the USFL. And, XFL ownership had probably no idea that was going to happen when they delayed a year. So it's hard to blame them. But, the advantage that they had with the USFL announcing very early on that they were going to a hub in Birmingham was that the XFL would be playing in front of real live audiences each and every week in those home stadiums before USFL season 2 started. And that was the one real advantage that the XFL had. Now, if they do a hub and then they're in the same situation as the USFL, they're punting on that one advantage that they had.
It seems like, and I that I'm blocked on XFL board stuff, but it was sent to me that on social, it was sent to me. I believe you had done a podcast interview right over there with the people had reached out. I can't remember if it was you or Mark, to XFL asking about some of these missed deadlines and timelines. And the response was like, this is harder than we thought it was going to be. Does that sound accurate?
Yes, something like that. Yeah, and I mean, starting a football league from scratch is very difficult. I'm surprised we need to make that statement. It is, and it's especially difficult when you have the bones of a league, as Danny Garcia, The Rock, and Redbird Capital did of XFL 2020, and basically kind of disregarding it and wanting to start. It seemed like it was their desire to use the name, but almost nothing else, and so. And I get it. Like when new ownership comes in, that's what happens. They want to put their people in place. They want to put their stamp on things. I get it. But that was again part of my frustration with not starting in 2022 is you had an opportunity, you had a league, you had all the background, the financial information, all of that stuff from XFL 2020, and it doesn't seem like they were really quick on the ball with utilizing it.
It's so weird, and I don't get that because I would argue there's so much more negative baggage against the XFL with media and fans and people that follow all this stuff that if you're gonna take this long, I've said just call it Rock Football League or whatever you want to call it. But like if you're not gonna capitalize in 2022 and be there and flip back on the switch or run the bubble season, that would have made sense to do the bubble in 2022. But to wait, have different cities, a different logo now. We're bringing back, we're not bringing back certain people. They were integral to it, right? Like Sam Schwartzstein. We're bringing back Dean Blandino. Like it's weird where we're making delineations. And then doing the whole, I just don't get it. I would have just started something else.
That's surprising to me too a little bit. When you're buying the league, when you're investing that $5 million seed money as each owner did, what are you really buying? And certainly the name, but what does that mean? Because like you pointed out, XFL 2001 certainly has a very negative connotation to it, to most people. XFL 2020, unfortunately, is seen as a failure. It didn't make it through the first season. There are extenuating circumstances, but ultimately that's the facts. We've had 2 seasons of XFL, but no second season of either one of them. So that is on the mind of a lot of pundits, a lot of fans, when they hear the letters XFL. And so I'm a little surprised that they didn't rebrand completely. They may have seen the opportunity with, we've seen what they've done with the X and what they want the X to represent. So that's something that they are pushing very hard is the meaning of that X and the bringing together of, fans and players or all these different things. So from that point of view, from a marketing standpoint, I guess it makes sense. But you're right, when you are basically starting from scratch and you have some people like the Doug Whaleys and folks like that who are coming back, but you're almost starting completely over again, it is a little surprising that they didn't do a complete 100% rebrand.
It felt, when they came out with the logos and stuff, and we'll backtrack here because we'll do coaches. I think we'll just go backwards in time here. We can do coaches and all that. But when they came out with the refresh and we were hearing the bubble and hearing all this stuff, I don't know. I don't want to cause panic on the 2023 thing, but it does feel like if they've decided now, okay, we're really going to do the 8 cities or whatever. Like this is this is USFL. I mean, they announced in May of last year that they were coming in April. Like this is about that timeline here, April to be kicking off in February.
It's very, jarring from day to day almost when whatever news comes out, because there are some days where it's like, oh boy, like I'm not feeling so good about this. And then there are some days where when the news came out that the personnel department had met with agents and they're saying, we're going to pay more than the USFL. We're going to give more benefits. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And it's like, oh, maybe they are, going to throw the necessary money at this to attract players that they need to attract to make this league successful. And then you're right, you hear about the hub and you hear about all this other stuff, and it's like, oh boy, I'm not so sure. So you get kind of queasy going back and forth from one day to the next, feeling really good about things and then feeling not so good. So still a long ramp, not as long as it used to be to start up. So even though cities haven't been announced, hopefully they have an idea. And sometimes you hear these, like, every 6 months or so, someone will talk to someone at the St. Louis Sports Authority, and they'll say, well, we're talking to them, but we don't have a deal. And you're like, what is taking so long, right? So it's just, those are the kind of things that kind of make you take a step back and say, what is going on here?
It is real, like you said, it's literally like day to day. Just it's this, and it's not a war, but it is a war, right? It's this spring football, and they're competing for the same. WWE competes against Netflix and all these things. Everyone's competing for eyeballs, and like I always think back to when we had our big fight with Arash Madani, one of the big CFL pundits, and he came on and he's just just crapping all over the XFL, and it's like, well, what does this even mean? And everyone's defense was, well, The Rock and Danny, like, they never fail. They've never done anything that's failed. They know. And then, like, I see some of the decisions they're making now. I'm like, I don't know if that's enough. Like, they're just there. I don't know. I'm happy to eat crow if maybe The Rock, that this was his one misstep.
Yeah, I think that's part of what has given The Rock and Danny Garcia a lot of leeway from fans is their track record. They have a tremendous track record in entertainment. This is a completely different animal, granted, but they obviously have a very good business sense. They have a good head on their shoulders. They know how to use social media for their benefit, and we can nitpick their use of social media and their teases, because I know that's not for everybody, and not everybody likes that. But their track record speaks for itself. So I think that's part of what's given a lot of XFL fans that's given them a lot of cushion in terms of, all right, this doesn't seem like the right decision, but let's let it play out because it's The Rock and Danny Garcia and they can do no wrong.
So we'll get into the head coaches here. So, the week of the big USFL launch, right? We were already on the road. We went to Nashville and then down to Birmingham for all this stuff. They come out, ESPN Get Up. We announce the coaches. We have a lot of like cell phone video of the coaches at home. Like, it felt weird. Even the talking like on ESPN was a lot about like, well, why did you buy the league? Danny, like, why did you do this? And like, we've heard that story now for a year and a half. What did you make of the coach announcements and how that all panned out?
I think the most interesting thing is, once again, it was on ESPN, and we've seen the XFL and its ownership use ESPN to get the word out, which makes a ton of sense because ESPN, as they call themselves, is the worldwide leader in sports. So if you want to get your message out, that's probably the best way to do it. But you also wonder if there's more to the partnership than that. Is this a sign maybe that ESPN is going to be in partnership in some way with the XFL, showing games perhaps? But yeah, I think it's still, the people who read those stories that Danny Garcia gave interviews to upon purchasing the league, that was almost 2 years ago. So I think it's okay to sort of represent the league and reintroduce the league and these people to a wider audience. The amount of people that watch Get Up and pay attention to ESPN.com is probably a wider audience than read those stories that came out initially when they bought the league. So I didn't really have too much of a problem with the way it was presented.
You're a lot more patient. This comes from you hosting Wrestling Night in America. You're a lot more patient about people's frustrations. Because I just sit there, and it's the same thing with the USFL. I'm like, and obviously self-serving, but it's like, God forbid you talk to some organization that knows what this is already. Like, same with the USFL. Like, every interview they do, it's like, well, we're launching this thing. I'm like, God forbid you just come in and talk about like actual like football and stuff. Did you think it was odd that we had the coaches and we do you feel as though the coach announcements were rushed because they started getting released?
Not necessarily. If anything, it may have been rushed to give some news the week of the USFL starting. I have really been hesitant to claim that too much of the XFL news that's been released has been directly affected by anything that the USFL has done. But I think it's pretty obvious that we had, 3 days in a row, I think we had news drop that week. And I think, it's too much to be coincidence that it's happening this week when the USFL is launching. So I think certainly they wanted some big news to get out. We had seen that Reggie Barlow was leaked as a coach about a month or two before. So, and the XFL was radio silent after that. So I don't think the leaks really had anything to do with them feeling the need to get out in front of it and to get out and say, hey, these are the guys officially. But I think it was more, hey, we want to take a chunk out of the USFL's coverage, maybe.
Because it's odd because, if we don't have the cities figured out yet, right? If we're still, are we hubbing in Texas? Are we just setting up base there? It's not like these coaches are being picked up by anybody else right now, right? I mean, NFL hiring cycle is pretty done. Obviously USFL is riding with them. So like, there wasn't like an immediate need to be like, okay, we got like, what's Hines Ward doing right now? We got to lock down Hines Ward here for 2023. So that's why I just felt, obviously the timing of it, you can speculate, but it did. I don't know what Bob Stoops was doing. He had turned down, right, the college broadcasting. He's kind of just hanging out.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I think it's, they probably had these locked up and were waiting for the time to release them that was going to be most advantageous, not only to the XFL, but also most disadvantageous to the USFL, and they decided it was the week of their games. I did think it was odd that you would name the coaches without naming what teams or what cities they're going to be associated with. That's a little strange to me. And so, obviously I think part of the reason is either they haven't locked down the cities, they haven't decided whether they're doing the hub or not. So to have the coaches out there is great, but to not yet know what they're coaching it's a little strange.
I just wish that when someone talked to us, I just feel like we could counsel them through a lot of these, we live and die by this. They're off in their ivory towers. I do feel like we are like the front men, right? Like on the battlefield with a lot of this stuff. And they're up, they're in King's Landing and we're out there. It's very hard sometimes.
They're dropping the news and we're like gathering around it saying, wait a minute, let's see what this means.
Yes. Even today with that I just retweeted The Rock's thing, or I took the photo from Facebook and I tweeted. That's got more traction than anything I've done all week. Like, it was crazy. I'm like, That's just the power of the XFL. Any of the coaches stand out to you, or the philosophies behind? We have a lot of former player coaches, or a lot of former players as coaches.
Yeah. One of my more recent columns for XFL Board was looking at the coaches and sort of breaking them down. You had 4 coaches, African-American coaches who have very little head coaching experience. Reggie Barlow has all the head coaching experience for the 4. And then you have the white head coaches, the non-African-American head coaches like Wade Phillips and Jim Haslett and Bob Stoops, who have just this gigantic head coaching resume. Anthony Becht is sort of the outlier there. So it is strange how that delineation was made. And I think you certainly, if you're going to go with first-time head coaches the way that the XFL has, I think you do want to balance that out with more experienced voices. So I think it was good that they brought in, obviously, Wade Phillips is a coup. Bob Stoops, if you had asked me who from the original XFL 2020 would be brought back as a head coach, Stoops would have been near the bottom of my list. I'm really surprised they brought him back. Pleased, but surprised. And Jim Haslett's a name who's, always, he's kicked around the league in so many different spots in the NFL in terms of that he's a well-known name. But to give these African-American coaches their first head coaching jobs, many of them, I think is something that should not be surprising. The Rock and Danny Garcia want to make the XFL a very diverse league, not only players, not only front office, but also coaching staffs. And the NFL's problems with diversity in its coaching ranks is very well documented. So if the XFL can get out ahead of that and say, hey, we're going to give an opportunity to some of these folks who may not get an NFL opportunity or a college opportunity for that matter, then I think that's a good thing.
It was interesting, and I believe listener Max brought this up. If I always like to give credit to me. We were watching, I don't know, did you live through the USFL games this weekend?
I'm sort of a USFL agnostic. I don't wish it ill or anything. Obviously, any place that players and coaches can ply their trade and earn a living, I think is a good thing. But I'm not super invested in it. I don't have that connection to the USFL. I wasn't alive when the first USFL was around, so I don't have that nostalgia for it. So I just don't have that same feeling the way I have the XFL. So I followed it kind of peripherally on social media and things like that.
Well, a lot was made. So, they had some, unique head coaching as well. So you had Kirby Wilson on there, who a long time, running back coach, really struggled in the Monday night game, right? Play calling, very odd offensive scheme. Really, they probably looked the worst of any team of the weekend, right? In terms of like, I think they only had 3 wide receivers, even like dressed and eligible. It was just very odd. And so, the feedback I got, like I said, I think it was Max that said, that's just something to keep in mind. If we want to give these guys that are former players or not former head coaches, if we want to bring in some guys, maybe make sure you have some good offensive coordinators and people around them, right? Because he looked very lost out there, and it wasn't a good showing for that as like, this is an example of giving someone a shot.
Yeah, and I think Anthony Becht, there was an interview published with him where he said, he's been in contact with, building a staff, and he's going to have some really strong assistants because this is his first head coaching job as well. So you hope that that's the case. You hope that they bring in some experienced voices. But really, the head coach is not about scheme so much. It's about being a leader of men. And I think when you look at those head coaches that the XFL has that are first-time head coaches, the Rod Woodsons, the Anthony Bechts, the guys like that, the Hines Ward, I mean, they're oozing personality. They're the players that they coach are going to be drawn for them. And they're players, coaches, who've played in the NFL for a long time. So they'll immediately have the respect of their players because they've been through that grind. They've been in the NFL for a long time. They'll have that respect of the players that they coach on that team.
Yeah, Anthony Becht was a weird one. Like, he's followed a lot of the XFL, like News Hub, and I think he follows us. Like, it's been for like a year now. I mean, I feel like he's been under the radar, involved in some regard he was the least
18 months. I think his interview said 18 months. It was the process of being hired as a head coach, and I mean, that's certainly ammo against the people who are saying, oh, these are last minute hires and the XFL is doing everything by the seat of their pants. If Anthony Becht has been in the hopper for 18 months and they've been talking to him, I think, that speaks to how long this process has taken and really the seriousness that the XFL ownership has put into this.
Some would argue 18 months might be too. I mean, what's the NFL hiring process? Like 2 weeks, right? We call up, God, what's the new Miami guy? Like, we call up Mike and bring him in. And I mean, he was hired in like 2 weeks,
Well, we also don't know, like, Terrell Buckley apparently recently just signed his contract because he put that on social media. But, who knows? Anthony Becht could have signed his contract 3-4 months ago and they've just been keeping it under wraps. So it could have been 18 months up to the announcement, but maybe a little shorter lead time before that.
Do you like the list of rumored city names now? We have the San Antonio, Houston, Dallas, Seattle, Vegas, no New York, no Tampa, Orlando. Am I missing one? St. Louis.
Yeah.
DC.
DC. Yeah, I think it's LA, New York, and Tampa were, I think, some of the more underperforming as far as live gates of XFL 2020. And yet there's the push-pull of that, plus it being such a big media market, especially New York and LA. Do you really want to abandon that when it's such a big media market and you can draw at least viewers to watch it on TV who may be invested, who may not be going to the games? So a decision had to be made, and ultimately the decision may have been made by the rent that they would have had to pay by playing games at the stadiums. New York and LA, I'm sure, cost a pretty penny for the XFL to play in any arena or stadium in those states. So that may have been the deciding factor when you're looking at the positives and negatives there. I think San Antonio and Orlando were two of the better performing Alliance of American Football franchises in terms of live attendance. So to go into those areas, I think is smart. You probably want a team in Florida if you're not going to do Tampa. So Orlando makes sense. And, the odd one kind of is San Antonio because that gives you 3 teams in Texas. But if that's going to be your headquarters or if you do a hub there, then it makes a little more sense.
I feel like it was in the last week too. I saw something about MetLife still having not been paid or whatever. But I don't know if that was involved in the bankruptcy or all of that. But like, then maybe they're gun shy about hopping back in, or I don't know. I mean, you got to remember a lot of these guys were burned or still were getting money from the bankruptcies before. So maybe they.
Yeah.
I don't know. New York is a hard one. I mean, the Red Bull Arena or whatever had always been argued as something besides that cavernous. I mean, MetLife is cavernous for even the Jets and Giants to play in it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and the other thing you have to keep in mind too is not only are these stadiums probably feeling burned by leagues that have come before and flamed out, but also the latest reporting, I think, by The Athletic about the Oliver Luck Vince McMahon lawsuit, and now Oliver Luck being sued by the bankruptcy people because there was an accusation that he had announced the locations of the teams before he had signed leases, thereby giving all the giving them the what's the word I'm looking for?
Like upper hand, leverage?
The upper hand, yeah, the leverage in the negotiations because the deals hadn't even been signed yet. So those deals may have been extremely advantageous to the locations. And if, The Rock and Danny Garcia and Redbird are saying, hey, MetLife Stadium, we'd like to come and have the team back. And MetLife Stadium said, okay, we'll do it under the same deal as we did before. And they're going to say, no way, like that's foolish. So that could be another factor in this whole deal.
I think XFL 2020. I would want I want the hard knocks of that. I want the hard knocks of the XFL 2020. Like, the famous, like, Vince wanted to be in Seattle because of like a house show. People cheered loud, or like, I mean, there's a lot of weird, like, people don't realize like that could have been somewhere totally different. Like the Dragons very much could not have existed.
And they ended up drawing well, so Vince was right. But yeah, I think we got the 30 for 30 on XFL 2001. We should really be getting a 30 for 30 on XFL 2020 coming up too.
More questions, but just really quick tangent. Insane that Vince McMahon beat Pat McAfee at WrestleMania.
Who's going to say no to Vince, right? Who in his inner circle, who within WWE creative is say, Vince, maybe you shouldn't do this. You're 76 years old. Maybe don't get in the ring. Maybe don't take your shirt off. Even though he's got an impressive physique for a 76-year-old, maybe this is a little too much. But no one's going to say that to Vince. It's his company. He's the chairman, and he's Vince McMahon. Damn it.
That was good. That was good. Pat had a good spot, like the leap off the top and then jump back up. I mean, I'm not the biggest Pat McAfee fan. I am more enjoying him this week roasting the USFL a little bit. He's been a little hard on them. So I'm liking Pat. The original reason we wanted to have you on, we had the big logo announcements and all that, the branding, talking about the style. I have your column here, they deliver too much style, too little substance. Obviously a little dated, we've got more stuff, but in general, how are you feeling about how the rollout's gone?
Hit or miss. I think I always want more, right? And the diehard fans always want more. We want to know what kind of soft drink Danny Garcia is drinking right now at XFL headquarters when they're meeting with head coaches. I mean, that's just the kind of information we want. And especially when you're a league that's promoting itself around the idea of transparency, and to be radio silent for as long as the XFL was very frustrating to a lot of us fans. And, really it was kind of like a prove it to us, like prove that you're in, prove that you're going to be 100% into this as owners. And we, as fans, I don't think felt that way. We didn't feel like we were getting the commitment from the ownership that they were going to put everything that was necessary to make this league successful. So, you get at the time my column was written, I think the logo had just been revealed, and we got the 4 pillars, and we got the press release that I mentioned in my column seemed more aimed at sponsors and broadcast partners than it did fans because of the corporate speak. And we've gotten a lot of that. And I think fans were just kind of tired of it. We want something more concrete. And, not to mention the fact that the logo didn't go over well with a large percentage of the fans.
What do you think of the logo? I have it wonderfully on my hat here.
I think it's one of those things that's got to grow on me. My immediate reaction was I was not a fan, and I'm still not totally on board. I think I've softened a little bit, but I think it's one of those things where the more I see it, the better it's going to be. Like, and let's be honest, no one's going to watch or not watch the XFL in 2023 because of the logo or because of what it looks like. And to be honest, I wasn't really a huge fan of the color scheme of the 2020 logo. It was the same logo. They just switched the color scheme from 2001. So I got used to it. I was fine with it in the end. So hopefully my eyes will get used to this one, and I won't even think twice about it.
Yeah, the old 01, whenever I have to pull that up to use it for like thumbnails or whatever, it looks so dated. That 01 logo, I mean,
Yeah.
it really looks. I don't know. I mean, I think the obviously we have our logo Markcast that looks similar to the XFL one. Like, I think it's a little more timeless, but this thing, it even prints weird. Like on the hat, they print the like copyright on there. Like it doesn't print right. Like the merch is still. These people need merch consultants. Like whoever is doing this. USFL has failed with merch, and the XFL, like this is just a flex fit hat. Like you can buy one that says the Markcast on it. That's literally the exact same hat.
Wow. Yeah, it seemed like that was. I mean, they had that stuff on sale the same day, I believe, that they announced the logo. So that may have been just something to get out, something to open up the shop, and almost like a little bit of a put it out there and let's see how our system handles it. Let's see. It almost is like a trial run for when they put the real stuff out there, hopefully, with the teams and logos and everything.
I will say, to critique the merchandise, I remember the 2020 merch was just like Seattle 2020 or whatever. Like the original XFL merch was horrendous, if you remember that.
Yeah, but I mean, if they sold it, hey, all the more power to them, I guess.
I want to, before we go here, we're going to wrap up soon. We talked about the transparency, keeping fans at arm's length. It's just interesting. I think it was the Sportico that Danny and I think Jerry were on talking about. Oh, we hate being secretive. We have so many ideas. Like we want to share, but we got to be quiet. And we're just so excited. And then like the first big thing they have is this logo that like completely like shits the bed. Like pardon my like language. I'm like, maybe we should engage more then. Maybe this isn't the right approach.
Yeah, that's tough. I don't know what deals they have in the making that they do truly have to keep under wraps. I don't know what they're just choosing to keep under wraps because they want some big rollout or they have an idea for how to roll out all of this information. So it is hard to say. You do wonder if they workshopped it, like if they brought in people and showed them, okay, here are the 3 logos we want to go with. What appeals to you? Like, part of me thinks they're so secretive about everything, they wouldn't want any of that to leak even to anyone. So, this was not great. I think your description of how the logo was received was accurate. And so, I'll go with that. But yeah, I don't know how much they're really going to, as they roll out the news, how much they're going to engage the XFL fan, because I don't know. I think they're just trying to appeal to such a wide base of fans that the person who's been the fan of 2001 and the fan of 2020 and now the fan of 2023, I don't know if that's even on their radar to kind of appeal to. We sort of saw that with the teases on social media. Obviously, they were playing to someone with that, and the only people who were going to care about that at that time were the diehard XFL fans. But as far as roping them in on any kind of big decisions the league is making, I don't get the sense that that's going to happen.
It's almost like, and I was just thinking about this for a second, it's almost like The Rock is like too big of a star. Like if that, like he exists, it's like his own planet, right? I mean, The Rock could be bought and sold right on the stock market, and it's almost like you're trying to maybe you're trying to interact online, you're trying to talk to them, or you got to whatever, you got to schedule time, right? Okay, we got to get The Rock on a call next week for 5 minutes. We need a minor celebrity that's in charge. Maybe could tweet back at you about stuff or be like, oh, hey, yeah, Greg, that's a good idea. Kurt Warner, whatever. Kurt Warner will be on NFL Network, and then you can tweet at Kurt, and he'll be like, "Quit making fun of me," or go back to his day. I don't. The Rock almost feels like it's too big, too out of touch with the normal fan that is watching this league specifically.
I think he has done a nice job of making himself feel approachable. But I mean, it's The Rock. Yeah. He's the biggest movie star in the world. How can you not at least to some fans, come across as, oh, he's way too big of a star. He doesn't know what we want. He's not concerned with us. I think he tries very hard on social media to relate to people in a way that you don't always see big stars, the size of The Rock do. So I'll give him credit for that. But yeah, it's a little tough. I will say, and I don't know if this went for the previous version of the XFL, but the XFL Twitter account does accept direct messages. Their DMs are open. And again, I don't know if that was the case with the previous version. I don't remember it being the case. So, Reed, if you have some thoughts and ideas, you can send them there.
This is a message for Jake Henry right now. If you're listening, do not get any crazy ideas. This is a message for Jake Henry specifically. Don't go crazy. Jake was the one that broke the shop. Jake was the one that they had the password on the shop, and then he entered so many fake ones that they like shut it down. And they're like, okay, stay away. They shut down the website. So I mean, we can be dangerous here online if we need to.
Absolutely, and maybe that's what they need to know. Maybe they need to say, "Wow, these people are really interested. They're really invested." That's a good thing, I would say.
I think it's a good thing too. Greg, we could talk for another hour. I so appreciate you hopping on early after work and everything to fit this in. We're going to talk with Michael Cohen here and kind of put to bed this real USFL trademark stuff, kind of final nail in the coffin with that lawsuit. But any other final thoughts, words before we let you go?
No, just to really appreciate you having me on. And I'll say the same thing I said probably last summer when I had you on. Be happy to come on again when there's more news.
I would have you on anytime. I would walk through traffic to get you on. Greg, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Michael Cohen, we took off in the plane together, and gosh darn it, we're going to land this plane together. We lived and died with it this whole summer with everything with this and all through the fall. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. So I joked off the top. I said, you're done hearing from me now that we are, the preliminary injunction with the real USFL. And you said, not so close.
Yeah, I mean, this is, one phase of possibly more, so the case goes on, doesn't end from here.
So for those keeping track, the Thursday before we had literally just rolled up in Birmingham. Like we'd been on the road for 3 hours, and like Dorothy and I sit down to have a beer, and I get the email that like this all came out. And so I'm sitting there like on my phone trying to, figure out what's going on. What is the latest with the real USFL versus USFL lawsuit?
Okay, so what has happened is what previously happened was a preliminary injunction was filed by the plaintiffs. And what that was is to get them to stop, to get the defendants to stop the proceeding on for just moving on with the league. So if that was issued, that would have put a kibosh on everything. So the judge came back without any oral hearing, which I was a little bit surprised about. I thought there would be a hearing, and just on the papers issued an order denying the preliminary injunction. Now, we talked about that the preliminary injunction is a hard standard, so it's not an easy thing. It doesn't mean that they have a good case or a bad case or whatever. All it means is that the judge decided not to put a kibosh or a stop on the defendant's activities now. Okay, so the case will proceed on, progress on, and just go through its normal course.
It said in reading through a lot of the reasoning behind it was, stopping this league that was getting ready to kick off, all of this money, everything versus like the real USFL being able to sell T-shirts and stuff. It wasn't an equal, like damage or potential damage, right?
There was a little bit of that. So look, these preliminary injunctions, it has to follow a very stringent methodology. Okay, so what they do is they look at what's the plaintiff's underlying legal claims. It was trademark infringement, right? So the judge has to say, okay, what's the likelihood of the plaintiffs winning on trademark infringement? So they kind of do that analysis ahead of time. And then they say, all right, well, if there's a likelihood of success for the plaintiffs that they're going to win, then the next thing that they look at is who's going to be irreparably harmed? Is there irreparable injury that needs to be assessed right now. So here's what happened. The judge came back and he said kind of good things for both sides a little bit. So there's some nuggets that each party can take away with it. One is that the judge said, yes, the plaintiffs actually have possible success on the merits in regards to their trademark infringement claim. And they did a whole analysis of why they believe so. They said that, the plaintiffs, they have a claim to ownership. Even though the defendants are the registrants, there's a good argument here that they're the actual owners. And then the next part is there's a good argument in regards to infringement. The marks are the same marks and so forth. So that leg of the analysis went towards the plaintiff. The second half of the analysis goes in regards to irreparable harm and a few other things, went towards the defendants. And namely that there wasn't enough immediate harm caused right now for a preliminary injunction to be issued. And a little bit to what you said, that there's other ways for them to be compensated monetarily as opposed to stopping it.
Thoughts when this came down without actually even making it to the oral hearings and just have the judge preside in the written, like you said?
Yeah, I mean, it happens. I mean, it happens a lot. It doesn't mean that one side is better than the other necessarily. Sometimes it's just the judge's style to do that. Other times the judge has a question that they're not clear about, so they want the parties to come in and have their lawyers argue in front of them and put them in the hot seat a little bit. And other times the judge can just decide on the merits.
Were you surprised that the preliminary injunction was denied?
No, I wasn't surprised because it is such a big hurdle. It's really hard, and especially because the league was already in motion. It would be a huge thing to stop them now. Now, the plaintiffs still may have an opportunity to be heard and go through trial and win in the end, and no one knows the fate of that quite yet. I mean, we have a little bit of a glimpse in regards to the trademark infringement. The judge thinks that there's a plausible claim there. But, the case has to move on and they have to go through the next phases and a lot can happen.
Not that I've been accused of being pro USFL or pro real USFL or whatever, but it does feel odd that okay, well, Fox had more money. They have more invested right now. They have more people hired. They're more high profile. They're getting ready to kick off little old, and I'm not trying to demean, but little old real USFL, we'll deal with this later, right? It felt like, well, if we have the ability to steamroll, we can just steamroll kind of here.
Yeah, I guess you can think of it that way. Fox is the big Goliath. And so I don't know what you mean by steamroll because they're the defendants in this case. So they're just, putting on a full-fledged defense. Okay. So, and they weren't, there was some discussion and cease and desist letters and things like that. But Fox seemed like they were always in motion with this. They were moving forward and they put their head down and this was something that was going to happen regardless. So, the plaintiffs in this case, they said, now is the time. It's like do or die. We have to file the lawsuit now.
Timeline now for moving forward. I mean, obviously this thing could drag out for a long time.
Yeah. So I went through the docket a little bit. Number one, that judge who I mentioned last time, he's off the case. So whatever happened, sometimes these district courts, they reassign judges for no particular reason. Maybe it's just, just reshuffling on their own end. So it's now to a different judge. I forget the name of that judge, but Walters is out. And then I saw a stipulation that the parties agreed to. They agreed that after the order of whatever the outcome of the preliminary injunction is, that they have to file an answer to the complaint. It hasn't been filed yet. So that's due in 14 days. Okay. And that's not going to be too exciting. Most answers are just kind of procedural in nature. It's not going to illuminate too much in the case.
The fact that this judge ruled and said they have merits or whatever, and now if it's reshuffled and the new judge moves on with it, I mean, the way he looked at it may not necessarily carry over, right?
Of course, they're different people. Judge Walters may have a different opinion in regards to what the new judge may think. But obviously, any new judge who comes into the case is going to review the docket, review the pleadings, go through the analysis that was done, and so they're going to base their opinion based upon the prior pleadings and orders.
So 14 days to answer. In your gut, do you feel like this really goes through the trial, or do you feel like maybe this was our big ploy and now we're just going to settle and try to get some royalties?
No, I mean, I keep saying anything can happen, but yeah, sure. I mean, they have a decent firm, and I think they're committed to the case, and I don't see why they would not go the whole way through if they needed to. And of course, parties always are interested in settling, but it depends upon what the motivations are of the plaintiffs. Do they really want to end this? And what's the likelihood of ending it? So most likely this is going to reach to some kind of settlement.
I mean, you could argue even that now with the USFL kicking off, that if they were to figure out some agreement, because I think the real USFL's big complaint was, well, we can't sell any of the merchandise right now because, Fox had kind of put the kibosh on that. And if they're able to sell their own merch, it's almost worth more to them now than it would have been a year ago, right?
That's a way of looking at it, because there's much more attention has been brought to this, presumably. I don't know how much publicity this lawsuit is getting, but conceivably, yeah, so the names are becoming even more valuable because of the controversy.
Well, no, and I mean they had the kickoff was Saturday. You had 3.5 million people watch.
Oh, that too, yeah, of course.
That's what I mean.
Absolutely.
I mean, the fact that the league has continued now, it almost I'm not pro one side or the other, but you could almost tell Ehrhart and them, if you could just be allowed to do your own merchandise, it's almost worth more now than it was 6 months ago.
That's true, and that could lead to a settlement. That could be part of a settlement negotiation. I mean, anything goes in a settlement. There could be very creative arrangements in which they allow Ehrhart to do that, or it could just be a cash settlement, so it could be anything like that, any combination of that.
In another life, I think I'm a trial lawyer. In another life, I think any other final thoughts, takeaways from this? I mean, there's a lot here. I skimmed through a lot of it when we got to Birmingham. Going through a lot of the different, they have a lot of this.
I mean, there was a lot of interesting quotes, so if I were to, and by the way, these are just, the order is a public document that if you're smart enough to figure out how to pull it up, you can pull it up. And, it can give you kind of a glimpse in regards to how this might proceed, so there were some, just really quick, some of the takeaways I got from this was, I liked when the judge said, indeed, it was defendant's intentional decision to capitalize on the public's interest by calling its new league USFL. So that's a little bit telling, and then let's see what else. And then there were some good quotes in regards to the ownership of the trademark, and then likelihood of confusion. Anyway, so I mean, if you kind of to parse through this a little bit, you can get a sense of where of how the judge is thinking in regards to the roadmap of how he might rule later. But of course, when you go through discovery, you do depositions, you do interrogatories and all that, new evidence might come to light that might contradict some of this stuff.
Yeah, I know. We're the discovery. I think people are excited for. If this goes forward, and we're actually getting some real depositions. And let's get Brian Woods on the stand. Let's get Steve Ehrhart on the stand. Let's figure out what's going on in their minds, making them tick.
That's where it gets juicy, right? Where you have some good video footage, and that gets leaked on YouTube.
I'll film pro bono. I film depositions. I'll film pro bono if really USFL wants me to come out and do it. I will gladly do that. Michael, thank you so much for this. I don't want to hold you up too much, kind of reiterating, but I thought it was good to kind of put this to bed for now, right? I feel like we're doing due diligence with that.
For sure. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, we couldn't have him join us for our big live show in Birmingham, so I wanted to make sure that we got him immediately following Pat Rifino with USFL, XFL, CFL, all the news hubs. How are you?
I'm doing really well, Reed. Thank you for having me.
It's gonna be good. So we have a lot to get to today. So we're gonna kind of segment this out. We're gonna talk USFL with Pat. We already had Greg Parks on. We did a bunch of XFL stuff. I do want to get Pat's thoughts about all the XFL news, Texas, all of that stuff. And then Pat writes articles. If you didn't know, for the Markcast, you go to markcast.com/articles. We'll post this one as well. Pat's put in a ton of work looking through like QB salaries and as it relates to like alternate football and quarterbacks and things like that. So we're going to do USFL, XFL, and then we're going to have Pat talk about that because he did so much work on it. We want to make sure that we get that on the podcast. How does that sound?
Sounds great with me.
So first off, big news. We did it. We fixed the USFL footballs. They just came out today. Daryl Johnston said that, you know, the kickers were complaining, the chips and all that. What do you think about them about facing with that?
I still think there are a bunch of kickers on the market that still deserve a shot to be professional kickers. Tyler Russolino, I don't know if you saw that tweet I made of the 3 a.m. hey you up type thing towards him. But at the same time now, like guys like Matt Mangle and Tyler Rauscha will actually get a fair shot, I would say, about proving their worth as kickers. So I'm pretty excited about that. Yeah. And obviously it transitions to the NFL or Canada if these guys do decide to go to a different league or get cut and whatnot. So it does streamline the process.
Well, it was worrisome because I watched that game. I watched the Stars game where Mangle, he was 1 for 3 on field goals. I mean, and I'm not trying to just mark out. I mean, that's just not stereotypical Mangle, like missing from 45 yards twice like that. I also saw a lot of quarterbacks struggling with the spiral and throwing the ball too. So it seems like, okay, we're correcting it with the special teams, but they still need to, because I think the difference here is they're practicing with regular footballs. And then the first down marker chip technology that we only really use twice a game is throwing off the balls when it comes to actual game time.
Yeah, it definitely is a little bit disappointing. If anyone's played any sport, it's always practice how you would play. And when I played football or when I played baseball, there wasn't a microchip in practice. So hopefully we'll see a little bit better quarterback play. These kickers kind of, for the Generals, Nick Rose missing 2 field goals, that wins the game for them, obviously. And so it did have an impact on these guys' career. I don't want to say careers yet, but it could have actually an impact on these guys' careers. Like Nick Rose is a fringe NFL kicker. He's probably on a couple guys' short list. He's played in a couple spring football leagues, and he's been in the NFL. So now he goes 1 for 3. If you don't put the actual in-depth work into it, okay, those 2 field goals are missed, and he ends up missing 2 more field goals throughout the season. Now he's 10 for 15. 10 for 15 is a lot different than being 10 for 13, or 12 for 15 or whatever.
Are you surprised? I am a little bit that they so quickly, but I commend them because believe me, I get the read is negative Nancy on the USFL and all that. But are you surprised? I'm so glad they changed this right away, but I did not expect it this quick, but I applaud them for doing it.
I mean, I think they had to with chicken salad gate, pizza gate, whatever you want to call it. So they had to do something, air quote, positive. But it shows like Daryl Johnston as a man, like being I don't want to say if the correct word is a man of integrity, but just a man of action more than anything. I know they spotlighted him with doing the Gatorade stuff, and maybe that could have been PR. Maybe he was the only one doing it, but regardless, the league knew there was an issue and they corrected it. So it's better to do that, better than to just kind of, we'll review it at the end of the season. It's like, no, this is your league. With these smaller leagues, obviously, there's a bigger impact that an individual can make. There's less red tape, maybe, I would assume. So it's good that they did something pretty quick. So
you're talking, yeah, Daryl Johnston got highlighted in that first episode, the same episode that had the whole Devian Smith. And we talked, and I'll preface this at the top of the show, but I kind of did a call-in show rundown about a lot of the USFL stuff. Kind of coming out of the weekend. I feel like the chicken gate and all that, I don't want to deep dive in that part today just because I think it's been beaten to death. If you're really interested in discussion on that, that's on the YouTube channel, the stream we did for Monday, the pregame for the Tampa. But in that same episode, they highlighted Daryl Johnson, moving the Gatorades, which I thought was a really good move. Like I got into a deep dive with Greg Parks in the interview leading into this one about XFL wanting to be the league of the people and feeling a little bit too far out of reach, right? We're conducting business in the shadows here. Where USFL, being Fox owned, I think people expected to have that wall between them. But if they're going to be the more transparent, approachable league, like I fully commend them for that.
So this league of the people stuff is kind of running a little dry for me, and to dive. And I don't want to. I'm not an XFL hater, because the thing is when you hate on these leagues, you're not hating on Daryl Johnson and Dwayne Johnson and Danny Garcia. You're hating on Luis Perez. You're hating on John Wolford. You're hating on these players who this is going to make or break their lives. That gentleman, Tenton Slate's the right tackle on the Panthers. For a lot of these guys, this is it. Like, maybe they didn't make the best choices in college academically. Maybe they were just, maybe they didn't graduate. Maybe they, there's a lot of things economically that can make or break a human being's life. So when I hear the rumblings of like the XFL wanting to put the USFL out, it's like, and we can talk about this a little bit more in the article, is that there's only so many spots for a professional athlete to be, especially a quarterback specifically, right? I think in my article I wrote there's like 192 North American non-arena league, like getting very specific into it, obviously, like non-arena league livable wage quarterback positions. I mean, when The Rock talks about, I was player number 54, so I know what it's like. It's like $45,000 to $55,000 for a lot of these guys. It's a livable wage, to where they're doing what they love, and they don't really have to work some BS job, to where they can actually enjoy who they are and like not have to work at a Modell's or giving training lessons to like spoiled kids. So when we talk about that league of the people stuff, that's kind of where my mindset goes. And maybe I'm incorrect in that. Maybe I'm taking it too personally, too sensitive, but that's how I view it personally.
Yeah, I want to deep dive XFL too. Gameplay, sticking USFL for a minute here. Gameplay out of the weekend, week one. What did you make of all this? With because we didn't even talk the Pittsburgh and Tampa game. That was before the after the stream we did. So what did you make overall thoughts of the weekend for the USFL?
Definitely sloppy, but it was expected, right? You had about 3 weeks of practices before everything kind of went to full throttle. I loved the first play call, like Luis Perez throwing deep to Randy Satterfield. Like, I don't know how it felt you seeing that in person, but I just loved it. Like, first play, like 50 yards down the field, like, let's go. Spring football legend Luis Perez. Let's make this happen. Kick the game off right, and then to have a kinetic kind of touchdown, a contested touchdown to an extent. With him throwing the touchdown pass, like, I really enjoyed that. The Gamblers Panthers game, I covered the Panthers. Very disappointed in how slow the Panthers started. Very sloppy. A lot of stupid penalties by the Gamblers in the third quarter and fourth quarter that kind of kept the Panthers in it. A little disappointed with the Breakers and the Stars when they played. I thought that'd be a way more electrifying game with Kyle Slaughter. Obviously, he got hurt, so a little bit sluggish. But I'm hoping as the season goes on, players get more in that game shape, rather. Players get more comfortable with each other, and from there, they're able to go out and put on a better product. But, this is the fourth week of practice, so how much can we expect? And now the playbooks can hopefully get a little bit deeper. So there's definitely a lot of negatives, but I try to focus on the positives because, like I said, these are these guys' jobs, and no one comes to our jobs and just says, like, starts booing us, like Sam Darnold was saying the other day. If I was a plumber and someone came to me while I'm fixing some pipes, they're not going to be like, man, you should really like think about being another plumber or something like that. Even if I did a bad job or not, no one's really going to be that aggressive towards me.
The thing that I will say, and I've been thinking a lot about this, and I was on a couple different podcasts this week because a lot of the talk has been, we knew it was going to start slow, it's training camp and all this stuff. The most people that are going to watch the USFL any game this season, I'm pretty sure. I mean, I'm happy to be proven wrong. Was the Saturday kickoff game, right? The 3.5 million simulcast, maybe for the championship, but just because of the sheer amount of advertising and everything that went into that. So that is going to be the vast majority of people sampling of the USFL, right? You already have Pat McAfee going, crap talking this as much as he can, right or wrong. A lot of pundits, talking their thing. The USFL could have had a 6-week training camp. They chose not to. They chose to save the money because it would have cost a lot more to house them and feed them and train them and the coaches. So it's their own self-imposed timeline, right? And we know the gameplay is going to get better, but Dorothy that watched it, my wife, or if my mom watched it, they don't know. Oh, they're gonna by week 5 it's gonna be really good. This isn't like Breaking Bad. We're by episode 6 it's really gonna get good. People tune in to watch football, and if the football's sloppy, I don't know.
My only caveat to that is that would by the USFL kind of I want to say being or more frugal, more financially responsible. It guarantees us the 10 weeks plus the playoffs. And I'm very curious to see what Ohio looks like because now it's a new venue. You're going to have Ohio fans. You're going to have people from the Midwest. And now that's okay, let's go. The new and I think it's going to make those actual home cities like like Pontiac, Michigan, wherever they play in New Jersey. It's going to make those crowds a little bit more, I'm ready to go, I'm ready to do this and come out. So I think the Ohio venue will say a lot about the future of the league. But I think I said in the group chats as well, I wouldn't get too crazy. I don't think anyone's losing their mind about money yet. I think everyone kind of realized that this was, I want to say, gonna burn a hole in the pocket, but I think they realize people in Birmingham people are only going to want to go to Birmingham so much. So
the other fear I have is we don't do well in post history to contextualize things, right? The ratings came out, they had good ratings on Saturday. I thought that USA rating I thought was phenomenal. I thought to get 778,000 on USA on a delayed game on Easter. I thought that was tremendous. The 268 is concerning, because we're not going to remember, we will, but the vast majority of people won't remember it when the rule, the history books are written about this. That game was going to be on Sunday and then it got postponed and people are going to see 268 Monday night and they're going to be we'll see major ratings drop. I'll be curious to see what the ratings look like this weekend. What did you make? Any takeaways of the ratings from week 1?
So definitely it was uber pumped that first, what was it? 3.5 USA, same thing. The fact that they got pretty close to 1 million, really impressive because I use that as my gym game. So I went to the gym to watch the game because they had it on the gym television because I have Fox Sports, I got Peacock. It's a lot easier to have to watch those games, a lot more accessible. So the fact that not only did you have the delay, but then you also watched the game, a long and relatively sloppy game between the Gamblers and the Panthers, and then you continued to stay on. It's a good time. I would be pretty satisfied with that if I was in the box office, in the management office. That Monday night game though was very, very disturbing. I don't watch much cable TV, so I don't know what Law and Order is dominating the people's televisions, but I do know that I was hoping to see at least 500 to a million, or 500,000 to 1 million, because what else do you got going on, on a Monday night? But obviously people had other things going on, so it's disappointing. That was definitely I was surprised how many people watched the Panthers game to crack that 2.6? You said 2.5.
The NBC one had 2.13, I think,
okay.
for that. For the early. That was impressive too. I think for a Sunday afternoon, I think that was great.
that was the most impressive one to me. Like everyone's gonna watch the first game and it's gonna be awesome, but 2.1 for on Easter after church type stuff. Very it bodes well to an extent, but you can take numbers and you can spin them however you want, right?
Well, the one thing I hate, and I didn't dare tweet anything because I knew I was going to get crap for it. When they came out and they said the NBC game was the highest early Sunday sports window in April, and I was like, I am the tallest wedding videographer named Reed in Seattle. Like, I mean, that is not like it's you don't need that. That's my point. And I wasn't going to tweet anything because I don't like. They should just be proud of that number. Be proud of that number. It's a great. I don't want to take anything away, but I was like, it's just funny when they rationalize that. I'm like, oh, okay, like of Sunday in April, and then it was very specific.
I got I went into that deep dive on like quarterback statistics for like post 2000 alternative league stats, and even I had people calling me out, and they were like, "Well, you didn't include the European like minor league stats," and I was like, "Dude, come on! I went down a deep dive of players we know. I don't care about these other guys who like played at the University of Troy for a year and then went and finished in some college in Germany and plays for the Hamburg Devils now. Man, come on! Like you can't do this to me." So if people would have went out of control if you tweeted something out, because I was a bad guy because I didn't know how many touchdowns Brian Scott threw in 2018 in the spring league.
Yeah, it's in it. So we've Pizzagate, nothing really up on that. I reached out to Devion Smith. I didn't hear back about I just was curious, like not even to get him on the show, just like, hey, are you going to FCF? Have they worked with you at the USFL? Like I was just kind of curious, lifestyle wise. That way we got the chip thing. Talk that. So let's look ahead at week 2. I want to get into XFL stuff, but week 2 USFL. We have the Friday night slot, USA, Panthers, Generals. Saturday doubleheader, noon Eastern, is the Maulers. Hopefully this is a win for the Stars with them taking on the Stars. Stallions taking on the Gamblers. We're going to see we're going to get 15,000 again. We'll see. And then the Sunday, weird times for the Sunday afternoon, 3 p.m., so noon Pacific, Breakers, Bandits. Which of those 4 games are you looking most forward to?
So I am a Panthers guy, but there's something in each one of those, and this is kind of a cop-out answer, but I'll say it anyway. There's something in each one of these games that intrigue me. No disrespect to DeAndre Johnson, but I don't want to say he lost the game, but I think Mike Riley's play calling lost the game. I have no problem with DeAndre Johnson taking 24 consecutive snaps. What I do have a problem is him not throwing the ball for 24 consecutive snaps. If he's going to be your quarterback, let him actually throw the ball once in a while. Unless you're running a read option, then that's how your offense is. I'm not ignorant to that. So that's kind of my thing on the Generals and the Generals and
Panthers
Panthers coming up. And I'm also really intrigued to see like how are that second half Panthers team look pretty good. Shea Patterson did a really good Johnny Manziel impression. The offensive line of the Panthers looks terrible, and that's not even talking about the center snap, Sean Pollard. So that's something else going on. The Tamu versus Kyle Slaughter, which those 2 guys are my top 2 QBs in the league. I'm really curious about that. Slaughter kind of disappointed me a little bit because overall I think he has the most experience at a professional level between the traveling on the practice squads, 3rd teams, and his preseason work, which he's thrown like 13 touchdowns or something like that in the preseason. So, and Tamu obviously is a recognized, not only does he have NFL camp experience and practice squad experience, but he also has his experience in the XFL. So he does have reps under his belt, and he's got preseason experience. So that probably would be off for the offensive output what I'm looking for. I'd like to see a 35, 20, 28, 35 game. Just because I think it's a good optic to see the high flying offenses and whatnot.
Are you talking the Breakers, Bandits? You think they need the ball out?
Yeah, I think especially because I think a lot of people do hold Slaughter in a high regard, and a lot of people think Teamu is in a high regard and those two guys to me, if they have a good camp a good season, they're back in the NFL. Like those two guys, like people, like I could especially with a weak 2022 QB class. I think there are people who are looking at those two guys that are like, yeah, these are people that we have an eye on. These are our short list guys.
I never get that in the NFL. Like, okay, we're signing Trubisky again, or we're going with even like Jameis. I mean, God bless him. Like somebody, I'm like, let's get a Teamu and pay him $4 million and just see what you can do with it. I mean, even with Heineke, like Washington didn't fall apart because of Heineke. Washington fell apart because of a lot of other things that were happening there. Like, I mean, was he not? I wouldn't say he was the most amazing solution for them, but I thought for the money they saved, they could have spent otherwise. I mean, that's what BC is doing in the CFL right now. I mean, I'm incredibly intrigued to see what BC Lions are doing this year because they have a quarterback that's costing them like $45,000, so they can spend $250,000 on the wide receiver. But I just never get why they don't, like Teamu and them, they don't get more looks than some of these like retread guys.
And I think I talked about that when we were talking about adding the XFL, if like both of the, because I do think that next year I think the USFL is coming back. I just think there is enough money put aside that they will come back. I think the piggy bank is good to go. And obviously the XFL is talked about having bigger rosters. And that was my big thing is like, who are the 24 quarterbacks that you can name like that? Like, and then, we had a little debate in the group chat and, all friendly stuff, but it's like, this at some point, because that was my concern. I think the XFL is going to go more for the retread guys versus the USFL, which went with the spring league and more semi-unknown, like 1 or 2 weeks on the practice squad type thing.
I think you're going to run out of incredible QBs here really quick when you have, 2 apiece USFL, 2 apiece XFL. I mean, even FCF.
It'd be 3, and if they're doing 70-man rosters, cutting it down to 50, they'll go 3 quarterbacks deep for an 8-team league. That's 24 guys.
Yep.
Like,
it's a lot. Question before we move on from USFL: how did you think Brian Scott looked? I have my fanboy eyes on the Stars. How did you think Brian competed on last Saturday or Sunday, whatever that was?
I love the fact that Bart threw the ball. I think at like some point, I think there were 24 to 3 plays at some point with the Stars having all those plays. And granted, there was the turnover and whatnot, but I think he's just getting used to it. Like, this is probably the highest level of competition he's played, and nothing against people in the spring league. But now it's time for him to I think he's been a little bit of a big fish in a small pond to an extent. And now that he's kind of getting, he's around players who have played in the NFL. And the closest thing he's gotten to the NFL is probably being a quarterback to come in and throw routes to a wide receiver who they're actually looking at, So I think it's a learning curve with a lot of these guys. I'm glad he got a touchdown. I'm glad they let him throw the ball. But let's keep opening it up. Personally, and a lot of things too is like these out routes for a lot of these quarterbacks. It's a hard route to throw as well, so that kind of takes away part of the field. So, and he's a little bit shorter, I believe, right? He's not like the tallest guy either.
He's tiny.
Yeah, so it's like they got to moving him around and whatnot. So, but if anyone's going to do it, Bart's going to do it. They have that repertoire. Obviously, a lot of people are high on the Stars because of the history that they had together. So I am pretty excited to see if they actually do open it up and whatnot.
A final note on USFL. I did watch, I need to finish tonight. I watched the majority of the United by Football. The one thing I really liked about that, and I'm not a Hard Knocks guy. I mean, I watch NFL, I don't watch a lot besides the games, but I thought when they showed all the coaches addressing and doing all the different like intro meetings and they cut back and forth, I mean, it was a really long segment. It was like 8 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
And I thought it was so cool because you got to see how different all the coaches were. And like you had Bart there and he goes, I'm not going to yell at you. Like, I'm a teacher. You can't yell at someone to fix, if you're making a mistake, yelling at you isn't going to fix that. Then you saw Kirby Wilson like screaming like a madman and if you're not here, and then you had like Jeff Fisher. Hey, I'm kind of cool. I'm Jeff Fisher. Like, well, I just thought it was really neat. Kind of got you in the head of all those different people. Like, tremendous. I guess I didn't really even talk about it on the live stream we did. Like, I thought that was tremendous, getting to know some of the players, getting to know like Chase and Brian and all that. But then especially the coaches, because like you don't get as much of them, and I haven't felt like we've got as much of them on the field as we did with the XFL with like the, Winston Moss yelling at people or whatever.
I mean, I think outside of Kirby Wilson, a lot of these guys don't have much to prove. And even Kirby Wilson really doesn't have much to prove as a football coach. I think maybe he might, the cameras might be making him kind of maybe, I don't know this man, so I'm speaking from
That's
the hip.
fine.
But, I mean, like Todd Haley's got a ring, I'm pretty sure with the Steelers and whatnot. And, I think he had opportunities to be a head coach and he chose to be an offensive coordinator. Kevin Sumlin's had success in college. I know Paul will rebuke that, but it's in reality, Kevin Sumlin statistically isn't a terrible head coach. Jeff Fisher, he can go 7-9 all he wants, but he still managed to make a 22-year career. You see the thing with Mike Riley and his wife. You can tell that while football is an extremely important thing in his life, as we've seen with, Dwayne Haskins and whatnot, it's a very small part of life, and it humanizes these guys a lot. So, Bart having his approach, and I did love that. Like, he was like, I'm a teacher. I'm building young men. Like, I'm here to mentor human beings. That's when The Rock can come out and say, it's like, we're the league of the people, all that goofy, all that rah-rah stuff. And I have nothing against The Rock either, but like, I mean, the USFL, yeah, they had a slip up with this chicken salad pizza thing, but I've seen no one else, come at any of these other coaches like that. And that speech by Jeff Fisher, was pretty rad. And during halftime, he's like, we were beating ourselves. It just felt personal, in the locker room and whatnot. So, and I do know someone who used to work with Jeff Fisher, and what you're seeing on television is pretty real to who he is. And I think he was also with the Hard Knocks as well, moving the franchise. He's done that twice. That kind of makes positive, give him kudos for that as well. So he's been on the Hard Knocks, and so he's kind of a professional at this.
I thought it was good. I thought, I feel like, USFL, like I said, had a lot of missteps this week. The Pizzagate, all that. I think they announced that the press conferences are going to be available to all the media via Zoom. You can download them, log in. Like, little things like that are going a really long way. The United by Football is good. You just got to be careful. I think this week, to round out the USFL discussion, I think that this week is the week to watch. I want to see what all the TV ratings do with all the games happening, if they're regularly scheduled, announced times. I want to see what Birmingham does with attendance when it's not the kickoff game that was been promoted for 6 months. Those are the things I'm looking for. Anything else on that? I want to get your talk on XFL, and then we'll do the QB.
No, obviously, the only thing I'll really disagree with you on is every week will be a big week, because these leagues are semi-scrutinized and kind of like fighting for supremacy and whatnot. So, and just all spring football leagues, and people want this league to fail. I feel like, in a weird way, like Ian Rappaport gets on. He's like, "Oh, there was a football game this weekend." It's like,
I hate smug Ian. I hate smug Ian more than anything.
That, to me, revealed so much about that man's character, because it's, and we'll probably talk about this with the XFL as well, but like, if you want this league to fail, that's fine, but like, people are out of work, it's just kind of, I want to say it hits because I've never been a professional football player or anything, but I've seen people who, and it goes into even my article, is like, these guys are stacking these paychecks together at hopes that either A, that this thing lasts for a couple of years, or B, that they get to the league. So when he wants to come out like that, it's like, especially in today's society where we're very sensitive towards like what's going on in our words and whatnot, it's like, dude, you're literally just kind of, there's hundreds of people whose livelihoods rely on this to work. So not everyone can just sit from their ivory tower and get a text message about Deshaun Watson's contract or something like that.
No, I don't want anything to fail. I just don't want these leagues to make easy misses. That's when I get critical of people like, I don't, like this XFL logo thing, or like the USFL with the chip or whatever. Like, I don't want them to make dumb mistakes. Like you have the world stacked against you. That is why we're critical about these. The only thing I really don't like is a lot of the time is fan control football. Not all the time, but some of the time I don't like
my
it.
God.
We can't because we'll segue to it. But that is my thing. I just don't want them to make easy errors. Let's no unforced errors here. You got the world against you. Moving to XFL, we've been on so long, but I want to get your thoughts on this. XFL to Texas, that's the big news today, where, it seems to be transitioning away from a hub, more of just like, the home where the XFL is going to be with 3 teams there. We don't know if we're going to be flying teams into the stadiums and back, or just doing training camps and things in Texas. What do you think about that?
So I don't, and I've gone back and forth with Mike Mitchell about this. I'm not pro hub for the fact of everything staying in one thing. I'm pro hub because I think it guarantees a season, and because we haven't gotten through a season in 2019 and 2020, if we can limp our way to the end zone and make sure that all these players are air quote doing the right thing and that are showing up for the games, and we're, God forbid, if some other disease comes up and we're able to semi neutralize and keep the league going. And obviously, like, kind of contradicting myself because football, when terrible things happen, football isn't the priority. But if we're able to kind of keep the ship afloat, it creates that hunger for that next season. And everyone's like, I did like watching the Panthers in Alabama. I can get a $15 ticket to go do Pontiac State or Ford Field, and then I'm in. I'll get season tickets. I don't care. So it kind of creates that hunger. Texas, you can kind of get away with it because you have I-35 will take you to San Antonio, Austin, and Dallas. So all within several hours of each other. So it kind of, Texas is a good place to maybe do a stadium in Dallas, maybe do a stadium in San Antonio, and it's a hub, but it's not really a hub. So it gets, and you got UT obviously in Austin, and Austin being a school city. It's like, yeah, you want to go drive 45 minutes to San Antonio and watch a football game, $15 type thing. Like, I think there's a lot of benefits to that as well.
I think the ideal, if you want the easiest thing to appease the most people and save the most money, hub in Dallas or San Antonio, and then a hub in St. Louis. Then you're only dealing with 2 stadium leases. You can fly the people around. If you don't want to fly them, do the interdivisional stuff like the Spring League did for a while. There's a lot more logistics there, right? Because then you are flying people. If you need to move people around, it is more expensive. But I think that at least is a little sexier and a little better, and you're going to get that for whatever St. Louis. You have to keep them in mind when you're doing all this, because that is like a beast over there in the East that, like, you got to feed them and you got to make sure they're happy.
When people talk about St. Louis and they talk about the lack of football, like, this is like, these people want. I still see Battlehawk t-shirts going around, sweatshirts, all that goofy stuff. The Edward Jones Dome is not a convention center. Like, there needs to be sports in there, and it's for, like, St. Louis needs that football team. Like, once hockey season's done, people have the Cardinals and whatnot, but there's stuff that can be done here, especially football, because everyone's really upset about Kroenke and leaving, and now they're really upset the Rams won. So it's like, they need football, and if you give them 4 teams at a minimum, if you want to do a divisional hub and you give them 4 teams, the fanboy over, the city will go nuts. And the thing is, too, is you're not too far from Chicago. You're not too far from Iowa. St. Louis has a lot of people within an hour east, north, west, and south that will come to these games. It's always the joke here in St. Louis. Oh, I'm from St. Louis, and like major cities as well. Well, where are you actually from? And they're like, an hour west. That's how big the St. Louis market is. And then you got people in Kansas City that will drive 3 hours to come watch football too, especially if you have like a former chief. That's if Shane Buechele, who's one of the backups, like we talked about in the group. If he came to Missouri, and he's got a little bit of a following now in KC, people will watch him play if he was a Battlehawk quarterback. They bring back Tamu, which I don't think they will if the USFL keeps going, obviously. But People will fanboy.
It feels, and I don't know, it feels easier to get to. Birmingham is a tricky spot to get to. Like,
Yeah.
and that's the one thing, people talk a lot about, oh, they're going to travel into the USFL. We're going to do all this. Like, we flew to Nashville, drove down. Birmingham, there's not a lot of direct flights. You got to fly to Atlanta and then drive in. It's not as accessible as you would think. Like, oh, everyone's going to travel in. I mean, we spent a lot of money and staying at the hotels and stuff. Like, there's not a lot to do in Birmingham except for the football. Like, we were there 3 nights, and I mean, thank God there wasn't more because I was running short of stuff to entertain my wife with. So, it's just I think if you were in the San Antonio and the Dallas and the St. Louis, you would be a little bit better of that. The coaches and stuff that all came up before. I don't want to retread all that but any other big takeaways with the XFL right now? You said you were a little sour on it at the top. You don't want to hate on it too much.
I don't like I said, I don't like hating on the league, because when you hate on the league, you're hating on Anthony Beck, you're hating on Terrell Buckley, you're hating on Reggie Barlow, you're hating on guys with an amazing opportunity to show that they can actually be productive members in football. So when people start hating on the league and like, oh, this league's a joke or there's a football game, it's like, hey, yeah, some guy's been working his tail off to go show that he deserves to be on television, and you don't even care, and you're an air quote football fan. Like, I did appreciate the 2020 for the love of football, like logo, or mantra, because yeah, it was for the love of football. Because guess what? Like, why was Landry Jones out there? Like, he's second round pick, or excuse me, third round pick, from the University of Oklahoma. At that point, he'd been in the league 5 or 6 years, probably has a little bit of money in his pocket. Like, why was he out there? Because he loves football. Because he's never going to be a starter. He's never going to be anything, but he's there because he probably likes playing football. And he doesn't know what else he wants to do with his life. So he's like, well, I'm good at this. I like doing this. I'm going to play some football. There's a lot of guys like that. So when I heard those rumblings of kind of like the XFL trying to like undercut the USFL a little bit, it's like, all right, guy, like, you're talking about, was it 45-man rosters times 8, almost 300 players' livelihoods, not including coaches and all that goofy stuff.
I think that For the Love of Football was a better mantra than tomorrow's league today or whatever the hell it is now. I think that that is, if I could have workshopped that better, I think For the Love of Football is a lot more straightforward than like, we're combining league and culture, and it's the intersection of everything that you've ever cared about. Like, I think when you have to send out a press release along with your logo to explain, like, well, and then the slanted lines, like, that means because, like, we're all from different walks of life, or like whatever the hell that, it was like a 2-page thing about like, this was, and then the font face, we use this. I'm like, you've thought too much about this. For the love of football. Okay, we're in.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. In today's age, I guess everyone wants to make a statement, and it's like, you can be pretty open. It's like, yeah, we like football. This could profit us, and we can give people an opportunity. Just be real with me. Like, I don't need the intersections of your life. Are you going to go to the left or to the right? And it's like, I don't know, man. I have free time on Saturday, and St. Louis has a football team again, and I appreciate that. That's the intersection of my life. Maybe I'm spoiled. I'm spoiled. So what can I say? I'm sorry.
Before we let you go, I want to talk. So you did the quarterback. I can't remember what we ended up calling it, like quarterback salaries as it relates to alternative football. You put a lot of work into this. Talk me through the inspiration behind this and what went into this article.
So when you see some of these guys, I was talking specifically, I think it was about Paxton Lynch, right? It was like, why does Paxton Lynch want to play football? So that was part of it. And then another part of it was Tom Brady unretiring. And I think I said in the group, I was like, well, that's 4 people's lives that are just different now. Like, someone was like, yeah, what do you mean? It's like, well, Kyle Trask doesn't have an opportunity to be a starter now, right? So he goes on the back burner. And it's like their 4th-string guy, Ryan Griffin, are they going to bring him back now? Or are they going to, so Ryan Griffin ended up getting signed. So that's another practice squad, like 7th round undrafted free agent that doesn't come. So by Tom Brady not retiring, it affects 4 other people's lives from and maybe this is a very, very minute fact, but it's the reality of it. So with these alternative leagues, like now you get to showcase your skills and all that stuff, and you'll have the opportunity to obviously make more money, but also provide a living to not only yourself and your family. But then it also goes back, and we've seen these stats all the time. It's like Mike Glennon has made $17,000 for every pass attempt he's thrown. I'm originally from New York. I watch Giants games all the time. I do like the Giants. I'm a Chiefs fan, but I like the Giants. I don't like seeing Mike Glennon on the field. And, last year when he was with the Jaguars, I'm glad he got another opportunity post his time with the Bears to show if he could play in this league. And I saw a player who was not that good anymore. And I'm not this big Jake Fromm guy, but Jake Fromm, why was he taking reps from Jake Fromm? Why was he taking reps from Brian Lewerke? Why was he taking reps from Clayton Thorson? Like, granted, I don't think Clayton Thorson's a star, but I know who Mike Glennon is. So it was talking about kind of the economics of that and the trickle down effects. And, also I'm a big numbers guy as well. So it was cool to see like how much money, like Kenji Bahir played 2 weeks this year and made $45,000. And it's like, okay, now you start thinking about that kid. He's 22 years old. It's like, how does he live at home? Like, he starts getting a little bit personal. It's like, does he have a kid? I don't know this guy. Jordan Ta'amu is one of the stars of the USFL, and he's only made, or one of the stars of alt league football, and he's made about 150 grand in 3 years. Not including his XFL paychecks, because I can't find those records, and I think it's all messed up because of COVID and whatnot. So, and it was cool to see how much a couple of these guys, because there was 111 quarterbacks who were on a roster during the regular season this year. So it's just a weird deep dive for me personally.
Well, it's interesting, and you have a lot of these guys like Brian Scott. I think hasn't made any money, right? Because you're like, these are guys then that are like, I don't know how they're financing, working, and what do because he's like training, and you're posting these things. I mean, that's the thing with these alt guys. We talk CFL all the time, and guys having jobs outside of the summer with the CFL. It's the same with this, and like Ernesto that's been on the show, Lacayo, he's in the arena leagues, and like. He's working, and I mean, I remember I had to have him come on a podcast, and he was like, "Oh, they got to call me into work because I got, he's like, I told him I couldn't because I had to do the podcast." And it's like, these guys have real lives, and then they're trying to, still struggle to train to be professional athletes, and then go out and compete. Like, I can't wrap my mind around that.
I wanted to put those numbers out there because they're not the most hardest thing to find, but it does take a little bit of effort. Like. And I'm hoping that some of your listeners could kind of, maybe who are, I don't want to say anti-USFL, but not as a pro-USFL and waiting for the XFL to come. It's like, maybe the talent of some of these guys, like this all gets filtered out at some point as far as like cream rising to the crop. And if these leagues do sustain, eventually we will have 32 actual quarterbacks, professional level quarterbacks in the NFL, and then we'll have 8 professional level quarterbacks in the CFL, and then so on to the USFL, and then so on to the XFL. If in a perfect world, that's how everything rolls out. But at the same time, it's like I do want, like Luis Perez has made $15,000 in the NFL between all his camps and whatnot, and he's from what I understand, universally loved by the cult of spring football. So, I mean, I just think it puts it in perspective. Like you're saying, it's like this guy's probably teaching some random kid how to throw passes, and a lot of these guys will throw at the pro days and whatnot as well. And you're wondering if they get paid during that. So, it's definitely fascinating to me.
It's hard, yeah. I mean, that's what I just to round this conversation out. Like, anti any of these leagues, it's the same with the CFL. Like, if you got love for the guys that are involved in the XFL or the USFL, it's the same thing. I had Jake Winicky on like 2 weeks ago. He's talking about substitute teaching kids and teaching PE classes in the off season and get ready to go up and train. Like, this is, these are not the leagues to like.
And he's got a family too. Like he's got a child, like a pretty young kid as well. So it's like,
That's why you can criticize the leagues, don't criticize the players. Pat, I really appreciate it. A deep dive today. We'll get you back on. We're gonna have to rotate because I gotta rely on a lot of you guys this year with all the USFL and everything to do a lot of this. So I appreciate it. I'm sad we couldn't get you in Birmingham, but I think this was a good treat. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and no, definitely a little heartbroken I wasn't there for game one, but I'm definitely looking forward. I'll probably go to Ohio since it's a little bit closer to me, a little bit easier to get to, and if I need to be the guy on the ground for us in Ohio, I will make that sacrifice. But until then, just glad to be talking. Glad that we have football, and grateful to be on the show to talk about football, regardless. On April 21st.
It's a girl we live in. Pat, I appreciate your time. Thanks. Well, I'm thrilled today. We're continuing our Argonauts CFL media coverage here. We have Jagarrett Davis. How are you doing today?
Man, I'm blessed, man. I woke up this morning. It's a nice sunny day out here in LA, so I can't complain.
Yeah, you're traveling now. What are you doing down in the States?
Man, I'm obviously besides traveling, training, spending a lot of time with the family.
Is that where you guys are based out of?
In Texas, yes. I live in Houston.
That's good. And so, getting ready for the CFL season this year. Thoughts heading into the season? Excitement? Are you motivated? Well, what's kind of on your mind right now?
For me, I was just telling a couple of my friends here that I'm starting to get that itch again. So that's how I know it's getting about that time to kick football back off. I mean, I'm excited just to one, play the game I love. Two, I'm going with a new team, but it's a lot of familiar faces like my head coach, D coordinator, DB's coach, and a lot of the players there as well. So it's like a new stepping stone, a new journey, so to speak. So I'm excited to see what we can do.
Yeah, going from Hamilton to Toronto, do you get such a fierce rivalry there? Do you get, fans, players? Do you get a lot of crap for that?
Oh, absolutely. I still get crap for it. Right? First of all, I tip my hat to Hamilton and Tiger King Nation. Like, those hands down some of the best fans I ever had the opportunity to play for. And put on a black and gold. And trust me, I still hear about it from time to time. I get messages telling me how I made the wrong decision, how I'm supposed to still be a tie cat forever. So it's good, man. As I know, I was loved and hated all at the same time.
Motivations to go to Toronto. What led you to that decision?
One, like I said, it was a lot of familiar faces though with my D coordinator, and then the potential business opportunities is what got kind of pushed me over the edge for it.
You talk potential business. You talking paydays, right?
Oh no, I'm talking about like them helping me branch out my brand, like pushing my apparel, selling my shoes and stuff like that, and just getting on a bigger market.
Talk about that. What are you looking to do outside of football?
Man, I have so much going on, but as far as like the piggyback on what I was just saying, I have my own like brand of JG logo, meaning just go. What name it? Shirts, shoes, workout tights, for man and females, undergarments. I'm about to actually drop a couture line soon, more of a like designer wear, want to wear out to the club or whatnot. And I have at least four pair of shoes right now. Working on my fifth one, but I'm probably gonna drop around start of football season. So just branching that out and just getting that out there just for people to understand, like, it's not secluded just for athletes, it's for everybody. For everyday people who get up and just go, regardless of what they got going on in their life, they figure out a way to get it done.
Where does the motivation and knowledge to do all that stuff outside of football come from?
Like me and my cousin had sat down, like when I first came out of college, was like, man, we want to start something that doesn't just, shows you in a football life, but outside of football, it's like we're more than just football players. We're more than just athletes, and more times than not, people want to see us in that athlete realm, or they see us on the football field, or see us on the basketball court, on the track, on the tennis court. So they never really understand the type of person we are outside of that. And for me, I'm definitely night and day for what I do on the football field to who I am out the football field. So just being able to shine a light, show people that we're actually normal people just like everybody else.
When you say you're night and day, what you mean? Because you're looked at as vicious on the field and not and more. I mean, we talk. What is that night and day?
Yeah, like everybody say off the field, I'm a gentle giant. Off the field, like they'll never expect I play football, and then when they actually see me play football, they don't never. They always ask me, are you sure that's you?" They don't look like you. They're just not the same person I know off the field. So it's always funny. It's like for me, it's a switch. So it's something I have fun playing with.
So going to Toronto, bigger market, excitement that way. Are all of this has been made, right? Toronto, it's a big city, trying to get the fans involved, right? Trying to get the CFL fans. Where do you fall on that and trying to get more CFL in Toronto love?
Um, just making it fun again. I mean, one, it's Toronto, so it's a humongous market. I mean, they're battling with the Raptors, the Blue Jays, the Maple Leafs. I mean, just the city in Toronto alone, it's always stuff to do. So getting them just excited about wanting to come out and attend football games and just being in that type of atmosphere is one of those things, you know what I'm saying, you don't get every day. It's one like me coming from Texas, going to football is God in Texas. So knowing what that atmosphere is and what it's like to grow up in that type of atmosphere is something that I'm saying everybody should be able to experience at least once. And bringing that atmosphere to Toronto, like I said, it's a big city. It's one of the biggest populated cities in Canada. So there's more than enough people who would love to get the experience now. Why not have it in Toronto?
A lot's been made recently. We're talking CFL offseason and moving around the hash marks and moving around the downside, all this kind of craziness about all that. I mean, what's your thoughts on the CFL game? What do you like about it? Are there things you would change, or what do you make of all this, online chatter?
Honestly, the CFL game, I like it. I mean, it's one of those things. It's we don't know. You're just like, what's going on? Like, it's too many different dynamics and moving parts. But you actually sit down and, you know what I'm saying, just make it plain and simple. It's still basic football. And, like, only thing I would like to see change is probably the yard off the ball. But at the same time, I get it because it's an offensive based league. So, and what everybody wants to see points or want to see balls being slung around. So, I mean, I really wouldn't change nothing. I mean, I just want, like I said, the biggest thing I said that they should change about the CFL is how they promote it. Like it's at least almost half their players or superstars are from the states, but you don't really see, you know what I'm saying, commercials or seeing, you know what I'm saying, billboards going up about them promoting the CFL in the states. Like I said, I'm from Texas. Texas love football year round, but you don't hear nothing about the CFL. Like CFL has an untapped market in the states when when football season starts, it's in June, it ends in November. So for roughly 2.5 months, you're not competing with nobody. You feel what I'm saying? So it's easy to get those TV deals, get those viewers because I mean football is one of America's greatest pastime sports besides baseball because it's the oldest sport. But it's one of those things. It's so easy to be done. They just won't do it. Why I don't know. But the CFL can be 10 times bigger than what it is now if they actually take the opportunity to try to do so.
Why you said why I don't know, but I mean, what do you think is it? Is it because it's certainly not lack of knowing that things need to be done.
Honestly, like CFL is based off old money, and like when you stuck in, we used to old things a certain way, change. A lot of people don't like change, and for it to grow and adapt to what it potentially could be, a lot of change will have to happen. And I don't think, like, you know what I'm saying, the forefathers and people that have has it a certain way, they don't want to change that, and they're not going because that's the thing. Change scares everybody, and everybody not can don't really know how to adapt to change in the proper manner and handle change. So they'd rather leave things as they are, and you know what I'm saying, worry about mixing stuff up and going, and you know what I'm saying, shaking things up a little bit. I mean, which unfortunately, it's gonna have to happen eventually because every day things are changing. Everything, people are growing. Everything's adapting. So especially with how social media has just taken the world by storm, it's too easy for you to do a minor adjustment and it will go a long way. It just not saying you have to accept it and do it. So, and that's the thing. And I don't want the CFL to get caught up in, getting left in the past because, like I say, the NFL is the NFL. It's like the big brother. But you got all these new leagues constantly popping up. You got the XFL coming back next year. I know The Rock gonna do tremendous things with that for the simple fact of he doesn't put his name behind nothing that's not gonna be, prosperous. You got the USFL. You got all these small leagues. They're trying to build football over in Europe. So my thing is because CFL is one of the oldest sports football leagues besides the NFL. Y'all got to capitalize on that opportunity because, like, if you don't, you're gonna get left behind. Cause you don't want to go from second to last, and you're an afterthought. Once you're an afterthought, basic history. And the CFL has been around too long and too big of an opportunity for them to maximize it for them not to do so.
It's just interesting, because a lot is always made CFL increasing Canadian viewers, right? Getting more Canadian viewers, but you're wanting to see more expansion, and not expansion's the right word, but more exposure in the States to try to tap into that market more as well.
Mm-hmm. Cause that's the thing. Like, unfortunately, unless people in the States, unless diehard football fans, or they have somebody or know somebody that plays in the CFL, most people don't know about the CFL. Most people don't even know the CFL exists. And it's crazy for when you speak about how long the CFL has been around. So it's one of those things where why not do it when, like I said, it's free publicity. Like I said, I live in Texas. You know what football in the South period is. Football in California is. Football just all over the world. Just everybody loves football. So why not take advantage of the opportunity when you have it?
Yeah, I just, we cover, like I said, we just got back from the USFL kickoff, and, I guarantee you any CFL game I watched last year, for the most part, equal to better than any of the games that we saw over the weekend with the USFL. And part of that is they had to really reduce training camps and get ready to go, whatever. But, people are wanting quality of play. I think the CFL head and shoulders is above, a wide margin of what we saw over the weekend by far. I think people would agree.
Yeah, so it's like I said, and then on top of that, a lot of guys, kind of get lost in the shuffle because it's still a lot of prominent guys who used to play in the NFL or played at these big universities. They end up going on to the CFL, making a long career up there. But a lot of times people don't know about it because they don't publicize about it. Unless they school mention it, then it does not say they basically get lost in the wash.
Well, it certainly work to be done. Thoughts? Any other thoughts heading into the season? I mean, I know we're excited. Getting into Toronto, made it deep run last year. Joining the team that way. Any other thoughts on the actual CFL season upcoming?
I expect this to be probably one of the best seasons yet. I mean, we saw a lot of movement and new signings, trades, and whatnot. So I think it's gonna be a way more evenly matched season. I mean, it's gonna be a lot of teams that people kind of sleep on is actually gonna make a lot of noise. Like I know Ottawa made some big moves in our front office and with signing players. Montreal still gonna be tough. Like I said, Toronto did what they did. Hamilton is Hamilton. You can never sleep on them. If you go to the West has always been seen as the better division, but I think it'll be way more evenly matched than it has in the past year. So definitely expect a great season upcoming.
Do you? Last question for me. Do you pay attention to that? Because I talk to some players. I ask them about movement on other teams, and they say, "Oh, I don't work. Head to the right. I'm just focused on what I'm doing." I mean, are you paying attention to the other team movements and what's going on?
I don't. I mean, I know it's happening, which for me, I enjoy it because it makes for better competition. Everybody wants to compete and be the best. So at the end of the day, I want every team to put their best foot forward. I don't want to play against no no washed up team or no trash team because then you're not gonna give your best. I want everybody. That's like everybody know when they step on the field with me, they gonna get my best. So they have to give me their best, or it's not gonna look good. It's not gonna be a great showing for them. So I enjoy it for the simple fact of I know what it brings. It comes with great competition. Comes with a great game. You know what I'm saying? Everybody don't want no landslide game. Everybody want games that's going down to the last 2 minutes. That's going to dictate the game. So when all these shows go around, it's to produce those type of games. So I'm all for it.
Well, I really appreciate your time today. I wish you safe travels. Thanks for taking time to talk a little CFL. CFL. I thought this was a good conversation. Good little. We're psychoanalyzing the CFL here a little bit in the off season, so I appreciate it.
No problem, man. I appreciate you just having me on to get able to, you know what I'm saying, go just a little bit in depth about what's going on in the CFL and the upcoming season and what to look forward to.
Awesome. Jagger Davis, thank you so much again. Talk soon.
I appreciate it, man. Have a great day. Appreciate you having me on. If y'all want to see what I got going on, I have it all in my bio, my link at www.champ56.com. Just go check it out.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. We'll be promoting it. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it, man. Have a blessed one.
Huge thanks to all of our guests today. I really appreciate Greg coming on. It really is a fanboy moment for me to get to talk with him. Been listening to Greg for a long time. Really appreciate him working with schedules and making time today to come on to chat kind of all the breaking XFL news. Really appreciate Michael Cohen, busy trademark and IP lawyer out of Beverly Hills. I told Michael, I said, we took off on this journey together. We set sail together. We took off in the plane together. I don't know if the destination was worthwhile, but I think the journey definitely was. And I wanted to make sure we could land the plane together, at least for the time being. I'm sure we'll check back in, when they go to trial or discovery or a settlement or kind of any of that stuff. I really appreciate Pat, really, like I said, a long in-depth talk with Pat. I think Pat is a really thoughtful guy, a great writer. And I think it's great when we get to have like him, Matt Lyons, Andrew Murray, all these talented writers come on the show because, it's written word and these guys are so passionate, are so knowledgeable. And I really appreciate each and every one of them for stopping on the show and to kind of chat through that. And then Jagger Davis, courtesy of the Argonauts, really appreciate them, the team over there for setting that up as always. Again, like and subscribe, themarkcast.com/review if you want to leave us a review. If you're on Apple Podcasts, all that stuff, feel free to leave us a review. Really appreciate it. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Get us over that 2,000 mark. Really trying to hit that. Do our big giveaway. I got a big thing planned for that when we hit it. So thank you guys all so much for checking out the show, and we'll see you next week.